could she be taken, stolen, removed? Who'd leave her forsaken, with nobody left to love?
It is considered a truism that deity will ensure that the tribulations faced by the sons of Zacharias are not beyond their inherent abilities. I often reflected on it in my later years, as I considered the many events taking place in my younger life. When I lost my foot, I felt as if deity was giving me the most difficult trial of my life. The strength of character this revealed within me was a critical foundation I could rely upon during the events that transpired only a few months later. Ulysses Anatoli, Capítulo 37.
Hallows End, California, 1991.
Catherine pulled Leela's small foot into her lap. She demonstrated the technique for tying shoelaces. The tip of Leela's tongue was barely visible as she concentrated on the lesson. She successfully followed the same steps on her other shoe. When she finished, she stood up and gave Catherine an enthusiastic hug before running off to join the other children.
Your daughter is very beautiful.
An accented voice spoke behind her. She turned and saw a man looking at her with a smile on his face. Catherine looked over to where Whitney was standing next to Thomas. She waved to her friend.
She's not my daughter. She's the daughter of a friend of mine.
The man settled on the grass next to her. He was wearing a business suit, unsuitable for sitting on the grass in the park.
You do not have children of your own?
He asked her. She laughed.
No, that would require a husband.
She looked out at the children playing at the nearby jungle gym. Sighing softly, she wished, not for the first time, that she was a wife and mother.
Surely not for want of opportunity,
he said. She turned to look at him. He was attractive with light brown hair and eyes. His accent was so subtle, it was hard for her to place where he was from.
True love is far harder to come by than the romantics would have you believe,
she said noncommittally. Seeing her friend preparing to leave the park, she clambered to her feet.
Excuse me?
She said, leaving him to cross the park to her friend's side.
Who was that?
Whitney asked. Catherine looked back to where the man was climbing to his feet, brushing grass off his trousers. Shrugging, she turned away from him.
Just someone here enjoying the park, I'd guess.
Thomas moved closer to Whitney, his arm bowing around her shoulders, reaching for Leela's hand.
We have to be going now. Do you mind?
He asked. She shook her head.
Not at all. I hope you three have a lovely day.
After their departure, she left the park, heading to the large house where she rented a bedroom on the top floor. She was almost to the gate leading to the house when she was halted by an accented voice.
Perhaps you would allow me to take you out for a coffee.
She turned and looked at the businessman walking towards her with a pronounced limp. She shook her head and said,
I would like that, however. I have someplace I have to be.
He nodded.
I should have known a woman as beautiful as you would be taken.
She cocked her head to the side and looked at him quizzically. Few men ever looked her way, and nobody had ever called her beautiful.
I have to go to work right now, but thank you for the offer.
Perhaps I might call you sometime,
he asked, persevering.
I'll be out of town on a job for the next 10 days,
she said.
But feel free to give me a call afterward.
My name is Ezekiel Zakarian, but my family calls me Zeke.
He extended his hand. She expected a handshake but was flustered when he drew her hand up to his mouth, kissing it. She felt the warmth of a blush stained her cheeks. Her freckled face would resemble lumpy oatmeal surrounded by a froth of short orange-red curls.
I'm Catherine Cicero,
she said. Normally she would not include her last name when meeting a stranger, but she felt compelled to reciprocate his introduction with one of similar detail. He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a pen and a small notebook and asked,
May I have your phone number?
She told him the number and then said,
I really must go now, or I'll be late.
She was aware of his eyes on her while she went through the gate, walked up to the house, and let herself in, shutting the door behind her. Upstairs in her room, she went to the window and looked down on the residential street below. He was gone. Ezekiel was his name. She said it out loud. It was poetical. She liked it. Zeke sounded ordinary next to the lovely sound of his full name. Ezekiel. He was attractive, she mused, but she could not understand why he thought she was. She always thought of herself as petite, flat-chested, angular, and with a riot of short day-glow orange curls framing a face covered in a few thousand freckles closely packed over every inch of skin that was exposed to the sun. She felt like a Dalmatian. She pulled out her suitcase and started to pack. Her motions were automatic. She amused herself during her packing by thoughts of the handsome stranger, imagining that he had fallen in love with her and was planning to court her. She looked at the romance novels on her second-hand bookshelf and snorted. Women in romance novels tended to be beautiful with dark sultry good looks, or blonde beauty. Even the redheads were gorgeous with no sign of freckles to mar their creamy complexions. They all had breasts that allowed for beautiful cleavage when they dressed up. No, she thought, nobody would write a romantic story about her forgettable looks. Even her parents decided she wasn't worth their time when they dumped her in a stable with nothing more than a name. Catherine snapped the suitcase shut briskly, trying to shut away the unhappy trend her thoughts were taking. She had a 10-day commission working with an actress at her San Francisco home, painting her twin daughters. She needed to focus on her job and ignore the intangibles of her puzzling parentage or the improbability of some handsome foreigner falling in love with her. She carried the suitcase down to the foyer, setting it down next to her art supplies. Poking her head into the kitchen, she smiled at her landlady.
I'll be back in 10 days to 2 weeks, Amanda.
Amanda looked up from the wedding cake she was icing and smiled at her.
I'll hold down the fort while you're away.
Catherine carried everything outside and saw a car idling at the curb. The actress told her she was sending a car to drive her to her estate. A man got out of the car and looked at her.
Did Kitty send you to drive me to her home?
She asked. He looked at her with raised eyebrows, his eyes traveling over her forgettable face and figure. He looked faintly incredulous, like he could not believe she was the artist he had been sent to fetch. Only after he finished looking her over did he confirm that he was the one sent by Kitty. He opened the back door of the car for her. While she climbed into the back, he slung her suitcases, canvases and paints into the trunk. The car was a luxury model, including a car phone and every other modern perk. Exactly the sort of vehicle she would expect Kitty to send. She closed her eyes and relaxed as the car left the suburban neighborhood. She was more successful as a portrait painter than she cared for, and being a name amongst the jet set left her feeling flat. Most of her subjects were either the spoiled animals or children of spoiled adults. Few of her commissions left her with any real appreciation of the so-called high life. She wished she could choose her clients, but her agent often reminded her that the plastic people were as apt to grow cold to her talents as to continue to laud them. She would do well to take what she could get while she was a hot commodity.